This video is all about how to glue in the weather seals on your Mercedes, what glue to use, how to apply that glue, and the difference in the types of glue you can get. We've reached a stage with the project car now where we need to glue in the trunk seal and also the tonneau cover seal, and then we can fit those two on properly. The seals themselves come from this company here, Euro. We've used them before, and we'll be using them extensively for various seals and other bits and pieces, as they have a huge range of SL parts. Now, fitting the trunk seal or boot seal on a 107 SL, this is a 280 SL, but they're all the same shape, the 107s, is slightly trickier than other cars because this seal is actually one continuous piece of rubber. It's not like Fords and other cars where you feed in the seal all the way around, you just put glue in the channel and then you feed it in. It's not quite as simple as that. You need to actually have a way of pressing that seal in there and keeping it in there, because there's not a tight fitting channel on this car. There's just a channel and the seal sits in it, but it doesn't clip in it like other cars. Now, when I originally did this 1983 280 SL, I never actually got round to gluing the seal in, just rested it in there. And where I did glue the seals in, I used a product called Weatherstrip, which is a contact adhesive. To be honest, I probably didn't apply it properly, but the fact is, I've never been that impressed with it. So in this video, I'm going to show you a couple of alternatives. Now, when I spoke to these guys here about what product they would recommend to glue in their seals, they suggested the 3M product, the 3M Weatherstrip gasket adhesive, which is this stuff here. So we'll be trying that out. A number of subscribers have also recommended this stuff here, which they've used for trunk or boot seals and various other seals, and I'd quite like to try that as well and basically see what the difference between the two is. Now, to test how good those two adhesives are, I'm going to take this piece of angle here, this I-beam side, clean it up, make sure there's no dust on it. Then I'm going to cut a section out of the old weather seal, and I'm going to glue two sections on here and here and see which one is the stronger bond. Now, this 3M Weatherstrip adhesive needs to be applied in a specific way. If you just go along and put a big dollop on there, stick that to there and wait 24 hours, it won't stick. What you need to do is put a very thin bead on there, spread it out, put a very thin bead on the bit you're sticking, spread that out, leave them to become tacky, and then go back to one of the surfaces. Once they're tacky, put another very thin bead on and then stick it on, and it'll act as a contact adhesive. So there's three very distinct processes for the 3M. The E6000 is slightly different. You just put a thin bead on. It's a self-leveling glue. Put a thin bead on, clamp it, tape it, weigh it down with something, leave it for 24 hours. When you take the top off the 3M, you don't need to puncture the top or anything like that. It's already got a hole in it with a nice thin bead. Nice thin bead like that. So you've got that thin bead. You want to spread it out like so. Almost the thinner the better. Super thin bead on the bit you're gluing. Once again, spread that out. It's a super hot day here. This is going to go off and tacky really quick. When you come to do this on the car, you will be getting glue, a very thin level of glue on both sides of this, because this will be gluing into a channel. Similarly, the U-shaped channel, you'll be getting glue on both sides of it. So we're just going to let that get tacky for a few minutes. This is now pretty much tacky to touch. We're just going to put a thin bead on there and then stick the two together like a contact adhesive. Thin bead on there. We're just going to push the two down together like so, and I'm actually going to weigh it. Okay, I've just pushed that down. I'm using a little cut piece of broom handle, as it's exactly the same profile of this seal that we're testing on. I'm just pushing that down and I'm using 2 bits of old seal to stop that rolling away. Now we're going to do the E6000. We're using the E6000 clear, and when you take the lid off it, you'll notice the top needs puncturing. But before you puncture the top, make sure you cut a little bit off the nozzle that comes with it, just so that you can lay down thin bead. Cut at about 45-degree angle so that we can lay down nice beads. I didn't do anything sensible like bring a camera stand, so I'm going to try and do this freestyle with one hand. We are going to lay a thin bead of the P6000 on there, like so. Thin bead on there, turn that over, like so. As I say, it's a self-leveling glue. There's my other piece of rubber. There it is. Hopefully I'm not going to glue that bit on as well. I don't mean to. Then we're just going to weigh that down like that. And then we're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to see if either of those are strong enough for us to lift it up and lift the whole I-beam as well. Now, in theory, this gasket sets in about 10 minutes. On a hot day like this, it'll probably be even less than that. So in theory, we could probably already take those away and start lifting, but I'm just going to do the test properly and leave it overnight. It's the next day and I'm intrigued to know which one of these two, if any, has stuck down better. So here we go, we've got 3M and E6000. So what I want to test is which one of these, if any, is stuck to that angle iron strongly enough so that I can actually lift the whole thing up. So let's start off with the E6000. Can I lift the whole thing up with the E6000? And I would say that is pretty easy to do. What about the 3M? I would say that's pretty easy to do as well. Both of those adhesives have done a really good job. Now I'm going to see which I need the most force on to actually rip them off there. We'll start with the E6000. Okay, I can rip that off. Came off relatively easily actually. Now let's try with the 3M. Can also rip that off, but I have to say that's not coming off nearly as easily, and in actual fact the rubber is bonding to here before it's coming off. My conclusion is that either of these two products would do to stick in the Weatherseal. You've got to remember that the Weatherseals that I was using in this test are not perfectly clean. They have been on an old car, so possibly both compounds or adhesives would have done slightly better with a clean seal. We'll be using the 3M Weatherstrip and gasket adhesive for our Mercedes, and we'll possibly be using this for some of the other seals. The main difference between the two of them that I can see is the application. This one here, you're going to, because it's self-leveling, you're going to have to kind of put a seal in and then hope that it squashes up around the sides and then take it out again so you've got good coverage. This one here, you're kind of going to be spreading the adhesive to exactly the place that you want it. The other main difference, I'd say, this one is almost easier to use because you only need one coat on there and then you just put the seal in. This one, you're going to need to coat the channel that the seal sits in, then you're going to need to coat the seal, and then you need to put another thin bead on probably the channel that it's going to sit in, or the seal. I haven't decided which way around yet. And this here, if you get it on the paintwork of the car, it's really difficult to get off. Having figured out which adhesive we're going to use, I'm now looking at the logistics of how we're actually going to glue the seal in. Now this seal I've just rested in here, it's not glued in here. The seal comes in one piece, but it's obvious to me that you would have to take this boot lid off to get this seal in. Otherwise you just end up getting adhesive all over the car as you try and hook it in and under. It's just not going to work. So I think the first thing we'll do is we will take the boot lid off. Then we will thoroughly clean out all of these channels. Just using some of these wipes to get the dust off. Then we're going over with a paper towel. We've done that 3 times and we're still getting dirt on the paper towel. So make sure you've got a really clean surface before you start applying the adhesive. When you come to take your boot lid off, don't do what somebody has done here. Undo the bolts and then watch this slide back and chip the paintwork. put some towels or something like that underneath here all the way around, so there's no chance at all that you can scratch your paintwork when you take this boot off. And obviously if you've got a friend or someone to help you, that's even better. We don't, so I'm just going to be extra careful. So just bear in mind, there are basically 3 types of seal you can buy. You can buy the low-cost seals for about 30-40 pounds or dollars. Comes from a company called Euro. You can go along to the SL shop and buy a replica of the Mercedes seal. It's about 3 times as much, just over £100. Or you can go along to Mercedes and pay even more for one of these seals. The advantage of the latter two is you'll get a slightly different profile, and I imagine it's slightly easier to fit. We are going to be fitting the less expensive seal, or showing you how to do that, because in this particular restoration we have got plenty of things to spend our money on, so I'm going to be showing you how to fit one of these low-cost seals. One thing you will notice when you take the old seal off, if it's the original seal, is that the old seal is almost made of a foamy type of rubber, and when you compress it, it'll just spring back into its nice, easy, even shape. On the new seals, at least the cheaper variety of the new seals, they are just pure rubber. There's not much foam in there, and they're not the same profile. Don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but if I put a piece of the old seal in the channel, you'll see that this bit just sticks up and is in the perfect shape, whereas the new seals, which are far more rubbery, that is not the case. This is not sticking up in the same way, and therefore it's much harder to fit these type of seals than it is the foamy seal. I'm going to do this seal in basically 2 parts. I'm going to do the back part first. I'm going to put a thin layer of the 3M adhesive in there first, then I'm going to put a thin layer of 3M adhesive on the seal, and by clamping it here and here, I'm using hose pipe to keep the seal in shape. This isn't going to get all over the car. I'm going to be able to carefully lift this over here, over these 2 springs here, and press this into shape, and then I'm going to be able to move on and do the sides and then do the bottom. What I found works best is if you put 2 thin beads in each corner and then just use your finger to rub in there, you get a very neat line. One tip I would give you when you're putting this seal in, and make sure that you're not inadvertently stretching the rubber, otherwise you'll find that when you get to the end, your seal will be slack and you'll have to cut it to make it fit. Once again, rather than trying to do the whole of the back in one bit, I've done it in 2 halves. This is the last bit now. We've just got to stick that in, and hopefully we haven't stretched the seal at all. It's all a bit tight in here, but it is quite possible to do this seal without taking the back light out. We've finished gluing that seal in, and the advantage of using this 3M product is it's not the easiest thing I've ever had to work with, because you have to put 2 layers on, but the advantage is you don't tend to get it all over the car, so there's not really much cleanup to do, at least not that I can see at the moment. We'll come back tomorrow and see how well we've done. I think the key actually is to get some hose pipe that fits in there perfectly, and then just tape it to the car so that that seal is pulled tight. It's the next day, and let's see how well we have done fitting this seal. Putting masking tape on your car won't damage it in any way if you take it off the next day. However, this particular car was sitting with masking tape after being repainted for several months, if not years, and to try and get that masking tape here off all the way around there is going to be a major job, which I'm going to save for another day, and possibly even talk to a detailing company about doing that. Just in case you're wondering what all these lines are, let's take out these bits of hose pipe. Let's see what we're left with. Now this seal is stuck in good and proper with the 3M adhesive. It's not going to leak and it's not going anywhere. But where I have not covered myself in glory in terms of getting the adhesive right up to the edge there, I'm going to try something, and I can almost hear the groans of the professionals saying, "What are you doing?" What I'm going to try doing, just to see if it works, is in situations like this where there's a gap and that seal's trying to pull the rubber away, I'm going to use the self-leveling E6000 to put a very thin bead along there, and that's going to find and fill all of those gaps, and then I'm going to clamp that across there like so and see if that E6000 is strong enough to hold that seal. Now, as I mentioned, you won't have this problem if you are using the premium Mercedes seals, because these things are automatically going to be in the right shape and they're not going to be wanting to fall down like that. There we go, we'll just clamp that overnight and that should hopefully remedy that small error. It's the next day and the moment of truth. Has the E6000 allowed us to glue that seal in with the right profile? Well, that E6000 has indeed allowed us to remedy our errors. It's filled the gaps there and allowed us to glue the seal right up against the edge, giving us the same profile as the original Mercedes seal. I did actually phone up Mercedes today just to double check the price of that seal, which is over £400 from Mercedes. So if you've never glued in one of these seals before and you're not 100% happy with the job you've done, it might be useful to know that there is a remedy. Just some E6000 glue in there, some broom handles cut to size, just clamped in, will get rid of any of those gaps. Last but not least, a huge thanks to everybody who watches this channel, sits through the adverts, leaves comments, tells us better way to do things, better places to buy things. We really appreciate all your comments and feedback, and always try and answer all of your questions if we possibly can. Leave the video here. Just put the boot back together, the lights in, the boot chrome, etc. Then we're going to be moving on to this horseshoe deck lid. We're going to be gluing the seal in there, sorting out all of this, and then after that onto the seats and the doors, which the seats are wrong in this car. There's nothing in the doors, they're just hollow at the moment, but I'm hoping that Goldilocks over there will yield all the parts we need. And then slowly but surely we're going to move on to the dash and then onto the engine and see if we can get this baby running. We got the 3M adhesive from eBay from these guys here, Shopping USA, £19.95 it cost us. Not cheap. I'm sure that's a lot cheaper if you live in the US. The E6000 is much cheaper, and we bought 2 tubes, £10.96 delivered. But these two products are different and do different things. In the event we use both of them, but once again, eBay from these guys here for the E6000. If you live in the UK, the SL shop's a great source for parts. £38.40 plus VAT for the seal that we fitted. You can also get that weather seal from these guys here, rockorder.com. They do deliver to the UK and Europe, although they're based in America. Price there listed at £19.37. But before you get too excited, there will be some postage and I imagine maybe customs import duty on that as well. But definitely worth checking out those guys if you need parts for your SL. They have got a huge range.